Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 2 of Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Will, and today we are going to be talking about GayRomLit 2015, which took place in San Diego this year. For the uninitiated, GayRomLit is the abbreviation for the Gay Romance Literature Retreat. And it's this year, 2015, was its 5th year. And like I said, it took place in San Diego this year at the Bahia Resort. And we're going to do our very, very best to remember all the goings-on and all the shenanigans that happened over the very long weekend and let you know how it went. So for the very first time, the retreat took place on one of the coasts. So far, the events have been held generally kind of in the middle of the country, and kind of flyover states, as they say. Probably to make it easier for attendees to get to. But this year was held on the West Coast, and since we live in California, we decided to make a road trip of it. We live at the very tippy top of the state here in lovely California. And despite the fact that we live about, I'd say maybe 3 long blocks from an airport, we decided to drive because it would have been cheaper. Yeah. It was cheaper.
It was totally cheaper.
Even with gas and, doing a 2-day drive.
Yeah, and the hotel in the middle.
Yeah.
Because basically, it costs as much to fly from Arcata to San Francisco, which is only 280 miles and only requires you being in the air for about an hour and 20 minutes. That is about a $600 per person flight because they know they have you a captive audience here.
Yeah, they kind of do. So we decided to do the road trip, which is fun. We enjoy driving in the car.
Yeah.
We're good car buddies.
We're good car buddies. We had good audio. We listened to a lot of our writing podcasts that we listened to. We listened to a lot of Author Strong, which is a daily podcast, which is a really great one. We listened to some Joanna Penn episodes.
We love us some Joanna.
We love Joanna. And we even got a shout out one of the episodes we listened to coming back because we tweeted in the car as we were driving that we were listening to Joanna on the way to GRL. Mm-hmm. And in the episode she releases every Sunday, and she made a mention of our tweet in that episode and thought that GayRomLit sounded like a pretty fun thing to do, which it totally is.
And it is, most definitely. Most definitely. So, yeah. It took us 2 days to drive to San Diego, and we got there... when did we get there? Tuesday
night, like somewhere between 5 and 6.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was a good drive. We got there. We immediately found Wade Kelly, who's one of our most favorite people to hang out with, I think, at GRL, and grabbed some dinner and just basically caught up with each other. She lives on the opposite coast, so most of our communication happens via Facebook. So it was great to sit down and have a dinner before really everything kind of kicked up. Wednesday was, I guess you'd call it the unofficial start to the weekend, because Wednesday was Writer's Workshop Day. We were in and out of the workshops most of the morning. Some of it was, I guess, I'd say for more novice writers with some of those topics. So we spent some of it just relaxing from our 2-day road trip and catching up with people along the way.
And primarily in the morning, you were doing
and I was working
pitch meetings.
I was doing some pitch meetings in the morning. The fruits of which we'll talk about later, but I was pleased to get some good feedback on some future projects.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in the position to have some decisions to make about what to do with the future projects. So that's kind of exciting. And I was also working with the booksellers room typically the bookseller room until this year has been the domain of the publishers. Dreamspinner, Pride, Riptide have been consistent. Presence is there. MLR's been there in the past. Sam Hain's been there in the past. But this year, a group of authors banded together. Ultimately there were 18 of us who banded together, bought a couple tables. We are authors who either are indie published or who are with publishers who did not have a table in the room, and it gave us the opportunity to put our books on display for the attendees throughout the weekend rather than just having them on a table and available for the couple hours for the book signings. I found it to be a great help. I was pleased. I think I brought about 40 books in total, 10 of each of my paperback titles, basically. Some of them I gave away to people who engaged me in some way and made me feel like I needed to give them a book. But I also sold a good number of the books that I had available on the table, which was great. It was a good discoverability moment, I feel, to be able to have that on hand. And if I go to Kansas City next year, I'll definitely be on that table again.
So before we get into the main reminiscences about what the event was about, I want to make sure I explain what GayRomLit is. It's really the premier event for readers and writers of gay romance. There really isn't anything quite like it. There are events throughout the year. There's the Rainbow Book Fair in New York. There used to be, what was the New Orleans event? I'm blanking on it right now.
Oh.
You can't remember either.
The Decadence? Southern Decadence?
No. The other, I don't know. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately. So really, the biggest event for readers and writers of romance literature is GayRomLit. And as I mentioned before, it's been going on the last 5 years, and it's a really it's unique in that it's just an amazing chance to talk and meet your favorite writers and hear them speak about their work. You can talk to them one-on-one. You can, totally fangirl to someone about, their book at the book signing, or, it's a really amazing event. And kudos to the organizers who have been pulling it off year after year. This year was no exception. It was really lovely. So...
But I think even beyond the readers meeting the authors also get to meet the authors.
Mm-hmm. You can great network. It's a great
networking opportunity. Yeah. Last year in Chicago, I had great conversations with Z.A. Maxfield. I butcher her name every time, and I hate that. Claire London, T.A. and Devon. Because I was at a place where I was trying to figure out what was next for my career and what I might want to do kind of after the Hat Trick trilogy wrapped up. And talking to them was a really great opportunity to find out what they'd done in their careers, how they plotted their way forward. And yeah, you might be able to pull that off on Facebook or via email, but just to sit down and have a quiet moment and talk that kind of stuff out was a really valuable opportunity that wouldn't have happened if not for GayRomLit.
Okay. So with the road trip and the writer's workshop under our belts, let's talk about what happened.
We didn't really talk about this one writer's workshop thing
that
I found.
Definitely mention that.
Really great. Riptide Publishing's marketing director, Amelia Vaughn, did a workshop on changing LGBTQ plus narratives, which was, I thought, really timely. She took the time to really step through the myriad of labels that now exist with LGBTQ. I think she had about, would you say 12 or 15 different definitions to give? Because now it's not just LGBTQ. There's questioning and asexual and other terms that involve queer. She had so many that just show how big the overall rainbow is now, and defined it for people who may not have heard of them. I heard some that I'd never heard before. And I felt pretty plugged in since I attend some of these workshops that 40 to None put on and some of the other organizations that I pay attention to. But it was really helpful. And she also dove into like how the narratives have changed over time too, where you have to think that your characters, if you're writing contemporary, now live in a world where gay marriage is legal and Don't Ask, Don't Tell's been repealed, but tempered also with that there are still more than a dozen states where you could still be fired for being gay and be discriminated in housing and such. So, it's not... if you're writing a coming out story, it has a slightly different narrative behind it now than it would have even 5 years ago. So it was really fascinating. She did a great job with that. I thought it was really great to see that in the mix of writers' workshop elements this year. And now we can move on from Wednesday and get into the meat of the stuff, kind of moving forward. Thursday, there were some great readings that we went to on Thursday. Arshad, and I'm going to butcher his last name too, which I feel bad about, Ashundin, who writes science fiction, did a reading from one of his works, and I really enjoyed it. And we'll link it in the show notes for sure. But it was a nice science fiction story that I engaged with during the reading, if only because it didn't feel like there was a lot of world building behind it. And sometimes I get bogged down in world building, depending on what the world is that's being built.
I'm not a fan of world building either.
Shira Anthony, who I'm a huge fan of, and I wish she'd sung this year. I think people tried to get her to sing at various points during the year, but she sang. She did a whole singing presentation last year because she's also a trained opera singer. And I may actually link to some of that video in the show notes from last year because I've got all the video on our Flickr account. She read a segment out of Dreamspun Desires book that she's got coming out. I think it's early next year, maybe late this year. I'll see if I can figure that out for the show notes too. Dreamspun Desires is a new imprint from Dreamspinner that really harkens back to the old Harlequin novels, which I know you're excited about, having been a Harlequin fan.
Indeed.
for a number of years. And Kim Fielding read from her book, Astounding, which obviously we enjoyed the reading enough that we turned around and bought it. It was really funny, the Astounding reading. It was about a guy who ran a magazine that was kind of going under, and it was funny, and it was kind of sad at the same time because of the situation he was in. But it was a funny scene that she read, and I'm looking forward to reading the whole book. Dine with an Author was also on Thursday, and that was kind of the most daunting element of Thursday for me because I went out to this table not knowing who the other author was going to be with, and luckily I was partnered with Morticia Knight, who I enjoy quite a lot. And we sat and we had we had readers at the table with us. We gave out gift bags. There was some shenanigans going on stage with the likes of TJ Klune and Daniel Kane and some others that were hysterical. And if you find any of that video on Facebook, do watch that because it's hysterical what happens when you get authors drunk and then partner them with a luau setting. Need I say more? Find the video, and if I could find some to link to on a public format, I will put it up for you on the show notes. And then we dropped into the juke joint later. We are not party people. Those of you who know us know that.
Yeah.
You put us in a room that's too loud or too crowded, and we'll stay at the periphery most of the time, and probably duck out within a half an hour. And I think we pretty much hit that on juke joint night.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did.
We looked at the Go-Go Boys and went, okay, those are nice, and then we went down and went to bed.
Yeah.
Because we're also old, and we tend to go to bed early anyway. Mm-hmm. So that was Thursday. It was a good day, good first day.
Yeah. Friday was more of the same. We had some great things going on. Primarily, we listened to our good friend Claire London. She took part in one reading. She read from her story, A Twist and Two Balls, which is, of course, hilarious. So you should definitely check her out. My lovely husband did his very first. He popped his author reading cherry this year at GRL. You read from the first hat trick.
Yeah. I've read before. I read at RainbowCon last year for a very teeny tiny audience. Read at Rainbow Book Fair this year, a different scene. But this was my first time to get to read at GRL, and it was very exciting. Read a little bit from the first chapter of Hat Trick to give people kind of an introduction to Simon and Alex if they hadn't had it before. I was very pleased with how that went. I didn't screw it up too badly. We've got some video that we'll post up to the YouTube channel and put in the show notes, so people can check that out if they want to.
Yeah, James Buchanan and Elsie Chase also read in the same time slot with Jeff, and I really enjoyed them. Yeah,
we ended up and bulked up on some Elsie Chase books as a result.
Yeah, we kind of did.
James writes, she writes in the more in the BDSM category, which is a little outside of what we tend to read, but the segment that she wrote I quite enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
really
or the segment that she read rather was enjoyable. After the reading, we went to how would you put that session? They called it a storyteller session, and it was a trio with Poppy Dennison, Wade Kelly, and SJD Peterson. There you go. Where they played the Wheel of Destiny. It was a hoot of a game. They were teaching people kind of how they break down coming up with characters and plot devices to use as they were building a book. It started out really simply. We were naming characters. We named we named the lead character. We named his love interest. We gave them occupations. Set up where they met, set up where they were going to have their first kiss, I think it was. Maybe set up what their conflict was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They set up 9 different elements of plot, but they were getting all the suggestions from the audience. So they had this wheel, like Wheel of Fortune, essentially. And as people would call out, for example, first names, they'd take the first 6 or 8 of them, write them on the wheel, spin the wheel, and that would decide what the character names was or what the occupations were. And now they've got their 6 or 8 plot points, and apparently they're going to write this book. Mm-hmm. It's unknown how they're going to do that between the trio of them, or if they're all going to write their own particular spin on it. But if we hear how that kind of comes along, we'll update it on the podcast, because it was a really interesting kind of insight into the world of building your character and building your plot.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Friday night was essentially a free night. There was no programming. Usually there's like a party or something going on. Friday was really left open for all of the conference attendees. So on Friday night, what Jeff and I did, we went and saw a show. We went to the Old Globe Theater there in San Diego, and we saw a dance show that, as we're recording this on the 25th, I think they're on their last 2 performances.
Yeah, I think it closes this afternoon or tonight.
Yeah, they're about to close. It was called In Your Arms. And essentially the premise is that several different playwrights, a group of like, what, 10?
I think it was
10 different playwrights wrote short little vignettes, short stories. And then those stories were then interpreted through song and dance. And it was just, we loved the entire thing.
We did.
We could sit here and just talk about each and every, moment, but they were all, wonderful. I really, really enjoyed them.
Yeah. It was great to see how they got away with interpreting these stories with very minimal dialogue. Mm-hmm. Most of the segments had no dialogue. There was one that Carrie Fisher wrote where there was a lot of dialogue that came from the person who was actually playing Carrie Fisher writing the story, which was hysterical. But most of them happened with no dialogue and no lyrics even, because most of the music was instrumental through the performance. We'll link in the show notes to the review that'll be on our website. I will say that it was great to see Donna McKechnie for the first time on stage. Throughout her career, I mean, she's best known as Cassie in A Chorus Line, and I never saw her in that role. I think we figured out this is the first time we've actually seen her on stage, even though she'd done some stuff in New York while we were there. Most recently, she was running standby for Cheetah Rivera in The Visit, but I don't think she ever went on in the short run of that show. Also had Ryan Steele in it, who I have a small fanboy crush on from seeing him in Newsies. And he really had a delightful piece with Jonathan Sharp, who we had not seen since either Rocky Horror or Dance of the Vampires, whichever one came last in that sequence. That was one of my favorite pieces in the show because it was really poignant. Sadly, one of the cast members in this was Henry Balayakoff. Did I slaughter his last name? Maybe. Who we've seen a number of times on Dancing with the Stars, dancing in the troupe. And I think he was a pro one season for about 5 minutes with somebody before they were eliminated. He's hot. Let's just call it what it is. But he was out. He was injured, so we didn't get to see him. But really solid show, and hopefully it goes on to a life beyond just the San Diego run.
Yeah, it's really exceptional. I'm super, super glad we got the chance to see it.
Yeah. Completely. So Saturday was essentially the last full day of GRL. You started it off with some readings.
Why, yes, I did. While I believe Jeff was working in the bookseller's room, I went and saw part of a reading. J.P. Bowie, Jeff Erno, and Ethan Day read a segment from the sequel to his story, Snow Ho. And of course, it being Ethan, it was absolutely hilarious. So I really enjoyed that reading. Next, we went to a small panel called "Why Quirk is Our Kink," and the authors Tara Lane, Amy Lane, and Z.A. Maxfield basically told us what they enjoy most about writing quirky, flawed characters. And Amy constantly going on about superheroes was a complete hoot. Cracked everyone up. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. And after that, after a brief lunch break, was the big author signing. All the featured authors piled into 2 rooms and signed. I was in a great position between Brandon Witt on my left and Wade Kelly on my right. It was pretty awesome there. Really incredible signing for me because it's really the first time that I've had fans in attendance to a larger degree. I signed last year, but I think that was more of a discoverability time for me. The second Hat Trick book had just come out. Being in the supporting author category, I was a little less visible than I was as a featured author. And certainly in the year, my audience has grown from GRL to GRL. A couple of really cool moments that happened. Chris Gray, and if you're on the video feed, you'll actually see this. Otherwise, you just hear this metal clunking around. Brought a lunchbox out from. I think she lives in the Chicago area because this is a Chicago-based ice hockey team called the Ice Hawks. They're actually in Rockford, Illinois. They're a farm team to the Chicago Blackhawks. But she brought me this lunchbox just to provide more inspiration for me, to put it somewhere in the office and let it provide inspiration for me. As far as I could tell from my research, the lunchboxes were given out in 2008 at an Ice Hawks game, and it features the current Blackhawks goalie Corey Crawford on it. So that's pretty cool. It's taking up residence in my office. Also, Carrie Jacks didn't give this to me, and again, if you're on the feed, you're seeing the picture that she gave me. If you're on the video, she made a piece of fan art for Flipping for Him, which she gave me. She actually gave it to me while I was in the sale room one morning. I signed one for her, and she gave me one, and I had her sign it for me. Both of these things were just really incredible because I've never had people bring me stuff before. So that was really cool, and I was really honored and moved by it because it's really awesome when somebody likes your work enough to either make the fan art or, bring you something like a lunchbox. She brought a lunchbox across the country for me to have, which was just kind of awesome. And the signing was a lot of fun. It was fun interacting with people. I signed a lot of books because I also had a short story that was in the anthology that they gave away to everybody at GRL. So I was signing that and signing my books and occasionally signing tote bags or the program. And in kind of a reverse function, I actually had people sign my GRL program. That was kind of Will's idea, so total kudos to him. But it was a nice way to kind of get everybody. And if you're on the video, Will's holding that up now. I have 3 pages of people who got my signature. I now have theirs also, which was fun. There was one author, I can't think of her name right off, and I apologize for that. But getting her autograph was actually the first time she signed with her pen name. And she actually wrote that. She signed her name and said, first pen name signature, which is very cool. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, while Jeff was busy schmoozing, I took the pile of books that I bought in the bookseller's room, and I walked around and got them all signed. The thing about GRL is that the authors are so genuine and nice and approachable, and normally the getting things signed or asking for autographs is totally not my thing. I usually make Jeff do it. But since he was busy, I was tasked with getting our books signed because, if you have a physical paperback and the author is there, you might as well get the thing signed. So that's what I did. I, hauled this big old pile of books around for about an hour, and I got them all signed, and everyone was so sweet and so kind, and it was a really terrific. I'm gonna say lovely again. It was a lovely event. It really, really was. Everyone was so nice, and it was so much fun.
He's not kidding about stack of books either, because shortly after we got home, we went out and had to buy another bookcase.
Yes, yeah, I had to come home and reorganize our bookcases for our GRL haul.
We've been on the cusp of a new bookcase for about a couple months, and it was finally time to just bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah.
Also Saturday, after the signing, and while we were having dinner, Wade Kelly joined us. Wade and I are co-writing in 2016, which we're both really excited about. And we'll probably talk more about on the podcast as we kind of find our way into how we're doing it. But we sat for pretty, I'd say 3 hours-ish.
Close to 3 hours.
2.5,
probably,
3 hours
yeah.
At a table in the cafe working through what our plot was. I had given her back during Rainbow Book Fair the basics of an idea that I had developed we were watching some Hallmark movie. No, it was a Nicholas Sparks movie. He always tells these stories where there's the present day timeline, and then there's all these flashbacks that kind of happen that tie all up together. I don't think we're telling a flashback laden book, but we've got our plot, we've got our 4 main characters, our 2 main characters and our 2 support characters, and a rough plot line down. And somewhere between her writing of Jock 3 and Jock 4 and my writing of a hat trick side project and the beginning of Codename Winger, we're going to start to work in getting this book written. And I think we'll have some interesting podcast episodes if we could pull her in to talk about what it's like to co-write, because it's the first time for both of us to do that. Mm-hmm. But it was fun. She and I plotted, and then we had this one sitting across from us, either to roll his eyes and say, no, don't do that, or, yeah, that's a good idea. He kind of kept us on task for creating appropriate plot points. He's good for that. He helps me with that all the time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Saturday night was the costume party that we spent about 45 minutes at.
Yeah, we did not decide to partake of the costume part of the costume party.
Yeah.
We went in plain clothes. So we showed up at the beginning and watched the parade of fabulousness go by. And so we stuck around for a little bit. But it was a long, busy day. And by the time the costume party rolled around, we were pretty wiped out. We were pretty pooped.
Yeah, we almost didn't make it upstairs for it, even though it was in our building.
Okay, I guess we'll go upstairs to the ballroom. So we got to see some fabulous costumes.
Yeah.
Then we called it a night.
Yeah, the 3 costumes I remember really well. Hans dressed as the Queen was pretty spectacular. His entrance, he got an entrance too. Lynn's silent movie star was awesome.
She was lovely.
We did not see them in person, but we've seen the pictures of TA and Devon as Bogey and Bacall. which were quite awesome. And Leanne's mystique was stunning and ultra committed to the costume. I think even a week later, she might still be washing some blue out of the hair, perhaps, or some red. It was outstanding. We'll link in the show notes to our Flickr pages, where our GRL pictures will be. And of course, if you've been to GRL, you can also find numerous things on the GRL part of Facebook and across many people's blogs who were in attendance. And Sunday was the end.
Yeah, the conference usually ends with a Sunday brunch, where you get to have a quick meal before saying goodbye to everyone.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see everyone one last time before everyone started heading home. This year, in years past, we've sort of extended our vacation and gone on to do other things after GRL. This year, since we were in Southern California, we decided to go to Disney for our anniversary. In 97, when we had our commitment ceremony here in California, we went to Southern California for our honeymoon. So this was our first time back to Disney since then.
Yep.
And it was a lot of fun. We stayed at the Paradise Pier Resort, which was across the street from California Adventure. We got to experience California Adventure for the very first time, since it, hadn't even opened when we were here the last time.
Yeah, the only thing that was open was Soarin', which we did. And now there's a whole park beyond just Soarin'.
Pretty amazing.
In fact, we were so close to the park, we could see the big Ferris wheel out of our window. Mm-hmm. It was a totally great experience, the whole Disney thing. And there'll be pictures up on our Flickr feed for that as well. Yeah. Had a great meal, enjoyed World of Color.
Yes.
Did Disney the next day. Mm-hmm. The Cars ride was awesome.
Yes, awesome.
The retooled Star Tours I loved.
A lot of fun.
I wished we had done that again, since apparently every adventure is a little different on that one. Blue Bayou we went back to because we had a good meal there on our honeymoon the first time. All in all, it was good. We walked all over the place. According to my Fitbit, we walked about 14 miles on those days.
Yeah.
And saw a fun Aladdin. That was kind of our last thing. We went to Aladdin the Musical Spectacular at one of the theaters in California Adventure. Good show. The magic carpet was fun, and I'm glad we saw it before they switched it out. They're apparently changing it to a Frozen show sometime next year.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else to talk about GRL related?
Whew.
Right?
I think that's it. I mean, yeah, that's all I can remember. Unfortunately, we did not take a lot of pictures this year, but I think so. There's no photographic proof of what we did.
There's some, but not much.
Just our faulty memories of the wild and crazy times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that we did this year.
I think so.
Next year's event is going to be held in Kansas City. We aren't 100% sure if we're going to attend. We might. It's in the maybe, sitting in the maybe category, and we'll see what our travel plans are for 2016. So, if you're a reader or writer of gay romance and want to attend the biggest event in the U.S., look into heading to Kansas City next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll link up to the GayRomLit website in the show notes. Although they won't have too much on it about next year until probably February, March next year, because they usually start registration in sometime in March or April for the authors, and then a little later for the readers. So that's it. Thanks for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at biggayfictionpodcast.com, where you can find show notes for this and any of the other episodes. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. For detailed show notes, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com.